It has been a while since I've played Sonic Adventure 2. People often proclaim modern Sonic games are bad because Sonic is always cracking corny jokes that are out of character. However, here we are. It manages to be blocky, tube-like, and rehashed all at the same time. While some seasoned players cannot comprehend how one could spend a half hour on an emerald hunt and chalking it up to get good, these are real experiences people have when playing Sonic Adventure 2. The game forgets to clue the player in on a very important gameplay element. Some safes are locked. To unlock them, the player needs to travel all the way to the top of the stage and hit a switch. I do not understand why the game fails to communicate this to the player in a reasonable way.
There may be a switch to unlock them in the room upstairs.
Sonic the Hedgehog is sort of a rock star of the video gaming industry. He fronted a succession of extremely popular titles, made enough money to buy St. Paul's Cathedral and grind it into a fine snortable powder, hung around with a lot of suspiciously effeminate young boys, abused a number of forbidden substances, spiraled downwards as inevitably as Al-Qaeda Airways, weathered a few very embarrassing attempts to re-grab the spotlight, and Sonic the Hedgehog is sort of a rock star of the video gaming industry. He fronted a succession of extremely popular titles, made enough money to buy St. Paul's Cathedral and grind it into a fine snortable powder, hung around with a lot of suspiciously effeminate young boys, abused a number of forbidden substances, spiraled downwards as inevitably as Al-Qaeda Airways, weathered a few very embarrassing attempts to re-grab the spotlight, and I was looking forward to a delightfully horrible game to get good and angry at, but it turns out I was disappointed. Sonic Unleashed is so bad, so utterly putrid, that I can't even get worked up about it. It falls right off the edge of my critical spectrum into the black, cloying void of dispassionate loathing. The only slightly tolerable parts of Sonic Unleashed are the nighttime manhog levels, mainly because you could put Sonic in a skirt, unfocus your eyes, and convince yourself that you're playing God of War, a much better game. It's almost entertaining to be able to pick up two small, relatively harmless enemies and slap them against each other like one of those possessed toy monkeys, and like God of War you can opt to finish off wounded enemies with a quick-time event special move, but they're terribly unforgiving, and if you fail, the sheer reality-altering power of your ineptitude causes them to regain most of their health, so you might as well forget it and just mash heavy attack until their skulls have been flattened against the curb. And just mash heavy attack until their skulls have been flattened against the curb. The leprous retards of Sonic Team have basically been lost in their own little world for the past few years, but occasionally something penetrates their malformed 3-inch thick skulls. Recently, for example, the notion finally broke through that most people want Sonic games to be about Sonic, and that his ever-expanding entourage of neon woodland creatures can all go dive under a tractor. So the cast of anthropomorphs is cut down on this venture. Tails makes an appearance, but he was with the series while it was still good, so I'll let that one slide. But we're also introduced to a new, helpful in massive inverted commas, pixie-like character who is like Navi from Ocarina of Time with a cheese grater taped to her face. Another thing that finally penetrated is that putting Sonic in a 3D environment has repeatedly proven to be like releasing freshwater fish into the Dead Sea. They just don't get along. So the day missions, as normal Sonic, largely consist of running very fast on a largely 2D plane. But then Sonic Team's nanny was called away and they fell back on their leprous retard instincts. Ironically, Sonic just moves too fucking fast, running face first into pits and spike traps that you'd need clairvoyance to be able to avoid on your first go, so the levels can only be beaten by trial and error. Getting to the next level is like pulling teeth. First you go from your world map to the country you feel like harassing, then you have to find the entrance to the mission hub while avoiding conversation with a bunch of spliffed up locals, then you have to navigate the incredibly unintuitively laid out mission hubs to find the level entrance, to find the actual game part of the fucking game. And Sonic Generations is intended as a celebration of the Sonic games up to this point, in which modern-day Sonic finds himself caught up in some temporal shenanigans and in the company of his younger self, still bright-eyed, innocent, and untainted by the Sega 32X. The pair of them find themselves tasked to repair the timeline by going through various levels modelled on areas from previous Sonic games, once in classic 2D Sonic 1 loveliness and once in horrible modern Sonic atrocity. At first I was thinking, okay, you're going to remind me of the less retarded days of the franchise with some remakes of some old classic levels. Remember all those friends of Sonic he accumulated over the years that all disappeared from more recent Sonic games because everyone hates them? Well, guess who's back en masse? But lest he accuse the game of putting them in for fan service, although I'd hate to think what kind of fan was baying for a return appearance of fucking Charmy the Bee. I get the feeling Sonic is doing the Resident Evil thing. That's where you spend years cluttering your game universe with characters and backstory until it becomes to new players about as penetrable as a stone slab that doesn't believe in sex before marriage. But then they make a game, Resident Evil 4 in the one case and Sonic Colors in the other, that actually does alright because it gets away from all that tangled nonsense, whereupon the developers go, phew, thought we lost it for a second there, and blithely bring the tangled nonsense back in the very next game.
Terrible 3D Sonic game to beat all terrible 3D Sonic games. We're going to showcase everything we've learned over the last 2 decades of terrible 3D Sonic games, which is to say absolutely bugger all. Still, it is kind of nice to have a retro Sonic level now and then to break up the god-awful modern 3D Sonic levels. Gives a nice nostalgic twinge to see Sonic Adventure on the Dreamcast is close to 20 fucking years old, and anyone who was into that is now pushing 30 and demanding that their beloved Sonic games have a maturer tone so that they can play them and not feel like paedophiles for doing so. And while there's a lot of overlap between stuff for kids and stuff for adults these days, come the fuck on. Fuzzy animals fighting a mad scientist with the power of friendship. It's not Harry Potter, get your fucking dicks out of it.
A new Nintendo console has been dancing a merry jig in the international marketplace for quite a while now, so we're well overdue for another cynical attempt to make the Mario 64 Lightning strike again and restore life to the lurching atrocity that is Nintendo's main franchise. I mentioned in the Phantom Hourglass review that the company has a terrible habit of treading old ground, but even by their standards the Mario ground has been trodden, bulldozed and purged with fire and salt. This time around they've taken the same ill-fated route Jason Voorhees took and have travelled into space in lieu of innovation. But don't be fooled, this is your standard fill-in-the-blanks framework. Mario's hateful, emotionally retarded ball and chain has been kidnapped again. Initially, Mario Galaxy gets an easy ride because it has to be inevitably compared to Mario Sunshine, the last proper Mario game disregarding all that spin-off bullshit, and you could transplant the head of Joseph Goebbels onto the body of a praying mantis and it would still compare favourably to Mario Sunshine. I understand that Mario is a plumber, but while having him clean up huge piles of semi-liquid shit makes for good characterization, it's not much fun to anyone except obsessive-compulsive squirt gun fetishists. What I did like about Mario Sunshine, though, were those sections where they took that asinine water pistol away and left you to navigate a set of colourful platforms floating in the middle of a bleak, empty void. They were frustrating, but in a good way. Frustrating like opening a carton of ready-made custard for your rhubarb crumble, knowing that the rewards will be all the sweeter for the effort. On the other hand, the boss fights are pathetic, pretty much all of them won by swatting their projectiles back at them like a game of interstellar Pong. The final boss fight in particular is about as hard as the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man's dick in the presence of his grandma, but then I guess Bowser is pretty much resigned to inevitable failure these days. Oh yeah, and the implementation of a live system is still as unnecessary as it was in Mario Sunshine, and as it has been ever since we stopped designing games for amusement arcades run by people destined to be the villain in an episode of Scooby-Doo. My main complaint is with the gimmicks. Criticizing a Wii game for being gimmicky at this point feels like criticizing a midget for being short, but when Galaxy tries to be unique, it gets in the way of the fun. The constant changing of gravity and camera angle makes it hard to predict whether a push in a given direction will send Mario the right way or send his big fat ass sizzling into the nearest lava pond. And this isn't helped by awkward and unintuitive camera controls. Plus, it certainly wasn't a smart design choice to make the player have to shake the controller so much because, like many gamers, my skeleton is made out of Jacob's cream crackers, and within hours I felt the pangs of early onset arthritis in my wanking wrist. All in all, though, I'm left wondering where this series could possibly go from here. I mean, once you've gone into space, everything after that feels like a step backwards unless your next film teams you up with Freddy Krueger. Maybe they could do Super Mario Universe, but that's really only postponing the issue. Of course, Nintendo always has the option to axe the franchise and start a new one with new, interesting characters.